Hi everyone, welcome back. So once again we have a different background. Cameron is moving out of this house really soon, so we've just sent a load of his stuff back to his mum's house. So we basically don't have much here at the moment. I'm actually quite impressed by the background I've managed to create here, considering just how sparse this room is. So this is what you're going to be seeing for this video, and then in next week's video I'll be back at my mum's house. So today I just wanted to do a bit of a chatty video with you about poetry, centering around this book. So this is A Poem for Every Day of the Year, edited by Ali Asirai, and it is a poetry collection by lots of different poets, and there are 365 poems in here, one for every day of the year. And I have been reading this poetry collection since the beginning of this year, and because it's like about halfway through the year now, I just thought it would be a good idea to talk to you about my reading experience with this book so far, and talk to you about some of my favourite poems that I found and some of my favourite new poets that I found through this, and basically just chat to you about this book. So if you've been watching my channel for a little while, you may or may not remember that I received this at Christmas last year and I was super excited for it. Like it says on the cover, there is a poem for every day of the year in here, and the poems range from the 1600s to modern day, and there's such a wide range of poets in here. It has a good list. In the front it says there are poems from T.S. Eliot, Lewis Carroll, William Shakespeare, Christina Rossetti, Seamus Heaney, Caroline Duffy, Kate Tempest. So there's a massive range in here, really modern poets who lots of people are loving and raving about at the moment, and then really famous poets, and often not so famous poets as well that you may not have heard of from a long time ago. So my plan when I acquired this book was to have it on my bedside table and to read a poem every day of the year this year, to just get more poetry into my life. I wanted to expand my poetry horizons and just read more poetry about different themes that I wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards, and be introduced to more poets that I'd never heard of before and probably wouldn't pick up. So that was my plan with this book, and I'd say it's going pretty well. So I guess it might be a good idea for me to first tell you about where my kind of poetry reading was at before I picked up this book at the beginning of this year. So when I was younger, I used to read quite a lot of children's poetry, and I also studied quite a lot of poetry for school. But before about a year or so ago, I didn't really read much poetry in my kind of recreational reading and just for fun in my own time. But then at the latter end of last year, I started reading more and more contemporary poetry, as I know a lot of people did. There was kind of a surge of it, wasn't there? And I really enjoyed it, and it got me into reading a lot more poetry that I never would have thought of picking up before. And so when I saw this book, I just thought it was perfect, and I thought it would be a really good way of broadening my poetry horizons and introducing a lot more poetry into my reading. So I am happy to say that I am currently on track with the poetry in here. I am up to date. I did succeed for quite a while, I'd probably say 3 or 4 months, of reading a poem every single day, which was great. But then it did slip a bit, and there was odd days when I had to catch up and read a few in one go. But I'm okay with that. I've still been reading a hell of a lot more poetry than I would have if I hadn't been reading this book. So I'm very happy with how it's been going. So I basically just wanted to have a chat with you guys about some of the things I've found in this poetry collection, some of my favourite poems I've come across, and some cool new poets that I've been introduced to through this collection. I've been sticky noting all my favourite poems as I've been going through with these little yellow stickers here, so that should aid me in this video. I'm probably just gonna flip through and kind of wing it and see what I come across and tell you about it. So I have been so pleasantly surprised by how much I've loved poems from hundreds of years ago in this collection, and also poems that are really new and have only been released in the past couple of years. So 2 of my favourite poems from the first half of this collection come from Charlotte Bronte and Kate Tempest. So they're both women who were writing hundreds of years apart, but I love them both almost equally, which is really cool, and I'm really pleased that I've not just been loving the more contemporary poems. So I thought perhaps I would read both those 2 for you, and we can see what you think. So we'll start with the Charlotte Bronte, which actually was on the 8th of January, which is my granddad's birthday, which I thought was really nice because I really liked the poem. So this one is called Life. Life, believe, is not a dream so dark as sages say, Oft a little morning rain foretells a pleasant day. Sometimes there are clouds of gloom, but these are transient all. If the shower will make the roses bloom, oh why lament its fall? Rapidly, merrily, life's sunny hours flit by. Gratefully, cheerily, enjoy them as they fly. What thou death at time steps in and calls our best away. What thou sorrow seems to win over hope a heavy sway. Yet hope again elastic springs, unconquered though she fell. Still buoyant are her golden wings, still strong to bear us well. Manfully, fearlessly, the day of trial bear, for gloriously, victoriously, can conquer, quell despair. I absolutely loved that poem. I loved it as soon as I read it, and I have reread it many times since. I'd never actually read any of Charlotte Bronte's poetry before. I don't think I even knew she wrote poetry, and I do love Jane Eyre by her, so I was really happy when I saw this, and really happy when I loved it. It's just such a lovely, hopeful, bright message, and the imagery is really beautiful as well. So I really enjoyed that one. And on the other end of the timescale spectrum was a poem in here by Kate Tempest, which I absolutely loved. So Kate Tempest is a contemporary poet, and I think she does a lot of performance poetry that everybody loves. She is so popular at the moment, and she is a poet that I've been wanting to read her work for a very long time. I know I will absolutely love her. I've just never picked up one of her collections because they're always very expensive. So as soon as I saw her poetry in here, I was so happy that I got a little taste of it. And the one that I really liked in here is called For My Niece, and it's a very short poem, so I'll read it to you. It goes like this. I hold you in my arms, your age is told in months. There's things I hope you'll learn, things I'm sure that I learned once. But there's nothing I can teach you, you'll find out all you need. No flower bends its head to offer, teaching to a seed. The seed will grow and blossom once the flower's ground to dust. But even so, if nothing else, one thing I'll entrust. Doing what you please is not the same as doing what you must. I really liked that one. It holds a very important message, I think. I liked the flow of it, and I liked how short and simple it was in many ways. So I'm even more excited now to read more Kate Tempest. And I mean, this is what I hope the poetry collection would do to me. It would introduce me to poets that I'd want to go out and buy some of their work. So, success. So there's another poem in here that I have tabbed that I absolutely love and that I think holds really important messages in terms of life, and that is Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. So I was immediately drawn towards the title of this poem because desiderata is a word that I use in my philosophy essays, which seems a bit odd. I was a bit intrigued and confused by why a poem would be called that, because desiderata means the criteria that something needs to meet to be successful at what it is trying to do, basically. So if I was writing about a philosophical theory of language, then I'd lay out the desiderata at the beginning of the essay saying a theory would need to meet these desiderata to be a successful theory of language or whatever. And in terms of this poem, the desiderata is laying out criteria for living your life in a good way, which I just love that. That is such a good idea for a poem, and I lapped it up. I love thinking about morality and just generally how one should live their life to be a good person and to be happy and all of these things. So this is like the perfect poem for me. I'm going to read you a little bit of it. I won't read you it all because it's quite long, but I'll read you a couple of verses that I particularly like. Go placidly among the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons, they are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. So as you can tell with that poem and the ones I've talked about before, there is definitely a theme of life and the wonders of life and how we as individuals and groups of people should live our lives. And that is definitely something that I particularly enjoy reading about in poetry. But one thing that's quite surprised me is that there are definitely a lot of poems in here that talk about nature and the beauty of nature and animals. And I didn't really think that I enjoyed those kind of poems as much as poems about individuals and the way they live their lives. But I've tabbed quite a lot of them, and some of them in here are truly stunning. And so I've got to mention a couple of those. So two that really stood out to me were On a Lane in Spring by John Clare and Green Rain by Mary Webb. So once again, I hadn't heard of either of these poets before I opened this collection, and I was just stunned by both of the poems. They both have such beautiful natural imagery and colourful imagery, and I just absolutely loved them. I thought they were beautiful. So I won't read you all of both of these, I'll just read you a few lines to give you a little taste of them. I believe they're both contemporary poets as well. So here's a little bit of On a Lane in Spring. A little lane, the brook runs close behind, and spangles in the sunshine while the fish glide swiftly by, and hedges leafing with the green spring tide. From out their greenery the old birds fly, and chirp and whistle in the morning sun. The pilewort glitters neath the pale blue sky. The little robin has its nests begun. The grass-green linnets round the bushes fly. And now a little bit of Green Rain by Mary Webb. Into the scented woods we'll go, and see the blackthorn swim in snow. High above in the budding leaves a brooding dove awakes and grieves. The glades with mingled music stir, and wildly laughs the woodpecker. So I am a massive country girl. I was brought up in the Lake District among the most beautiful nature, if you didn't know. So it isn't really a surprise I love these poems so much. I just really related to the beautiful natural imagery, and I was just so sucked into the whole thing. I just absolutely loved reading them. So those were two that definitely stood out quite a lot to me. So I'd probably say that gives you quite a good look into the poems that I've been loving the most in this collection so far, but there is one more that I just have to tell you about because I absolutely loved it. So if you didn't know, I am a massive language nerd. I absolutely love the English language and grammar and punctuation. I absolutely love proofreading things for people. It's so fun to me. So when I found this poem, which is called The Poetry Grand National, I absolutely fell in love with it, and you will see why. The poems line up, they're under starters orders, they're off. Adverb leaps gracefully over the first fence, followed by adjective, a sleek Palomino poem. Simile is overtaking on the outside, like a pebble skimming the water. Halfway round the course, and hyperbole is gaining on the leaders, travelling at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Adverb strides smoothly into first place. Haiku had good odds, but is far behind and falls at the last syllable. And as they flash past the winning post, the crowd is cheering. The winner is Metaphor, who quietly takes a bow. Is that not just the most clever, fun poem ever? That just brings me so much joy. I can totally see why some people wouldn't like this. I read this one to Cameron and it just went over his head and he didn't like it at all. But if you are like me and you're a language nerd and you completely get this poem and love it as much as I do, then please let me know. I think it's amazing. So I think that will probably do for telling you about some of my favourite finds in this collection so far. I have absolutely loved reading this throughout the first half of this year, and I'm really excited to read the rest of it in the latter half of the year. I've discovered so many great poems and poets through this, and I'll definitely be buying the other version of this book, which is a poem for every night of the year, and doing the same thing next year to read even more. So thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. I hope it wasn't too dull for those of you who don't like poetry too much, but for those of you who do like poetry or are wanting to get into poetry a bit more, then I hope it was interesting or fun at all. I'd love to know whether you are doing anything similar this year to get more poetry into your reading, or whether you already read a lot of poetry and would like to recommend me any collections. I'm open to reading any type of poetry, so please do be sure to let me know some of your favourites down below. So thank you so much for watching once again, guys. I've really enjoyed this video and chatting to you about poetry and going over some of my favourite poems from the collection. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you're all doing really well and are enjoying the sun. I'm going to go out and enjoy it now with a homemade smoothie, and I'll see you all next week with my next video. Bye, guys.